At the end of last summer, Linda Wasselsew and I, Jack Winters, had just finished a voyage to Alaska and the Queen Charlotte Islands, a trip which we had enjoyed immensely. We discovered that many people regard it as somewhat eccentric to live full-time on a boat as we do. There are many others, so to speak, in the same boat, and we found ourselves surrounded by many of them here in Victoria this last winter. Here are just a few of them.
How we got into sailing, well, probably through our father. He had trailer sailors and small power boats and that sort of thing. So from Dad we got into sailing. This is my brother and myself, and we've since had boats of our own. The last boat that we had ourselves before this one was these two here. And then for years, well, we actually started building a boat, thinking that it was the only way that we could get offshore, which was a big sort of dream of ours.
So I came to Canada in October of 2004, and by the second week of October I was looking for boats. It wasn't in the plan. It wasn't what I had planned coming. I wanted to get back into sailing, but I hadn't seriously thought about owning. But spent a lot of time at the marinas in the area.
I like sailing because it's a good way of meeting people in other parts of the world. It's a good way to have all your own stuff with you everywhere. It's a way to have also a very big bathtub.
I was conceived on this boat. My parents bought this boat brand new in 1975 and proceeded to retire early and sail around the world. And I was conceived on the later end of the trip on the Pacific side of the Panama Canal.
I've been on the water all my life, actually. If it hasn't been on a river or a lake or the ocean, it's been my whole life, and I'm a Pisces, so I feel quite at home in the sea.
I wanted to do this my whole life, actually.
Yeah.
So our youngest graduated high school and moved out of the house, and so now it was possible for us to do this, and it's working out very well.
Sold everything.
Yeah, sold, gave away, threw away. Yeah, purged everything. Yeah, and left.
To get two partners that both enjoy doing the same thing is big, and usually you'll get one that, I want to do the same thing, and the other one wants to, I don't know, climb mountains or something, and it's hard for both people to get on the same parallel. So
I've always been a boat nut, and that boats came first and everything else came second, including my career, which was supposed to be the most important thing in my life. So I went through a series of wooden boats, and it wasn't long before I had a Concordia yawl, really beautiful, sexy, 40-foot ocean-going vessel with lots of tumble home. And that is the quality of a boat in the hull, where it bends back on itself toward the deck. This thing was just filled with curves. And one day I was sailing my Concordia yawl to Matinicus Island in Maine. And I go into this harbor, and this guy rows up to the boat with two women in his boat, and he says, "Is this the Kennedy yacht?" And I said, "No, it's not." And everybody else on board said, "Yes, it is." And I said, "No, it's not." And my crew was always trying to make trouble in this way. And there was silence from these folks in the boat, and then finally a gentleman said, "You know, if I'd known this wasn't the Kennedy yacht, I probably wouldn't be telling you that you're going to be on dry land in 20 minutes. The Kennedy yacht, which came in the next day, was this boat. And many times I've almost crossed paths with this boat. On board the boat that day was Bobby Kennedy and John Glenn, the astronaut. And it turns out that Tom Watson, the original owner of this boat, loaned the boat to Bobby Kennedy all the time.
When I left France, I had the idea or the goal to see 3 friends. So I already saw 2 of them. The 2 of them were one in Guadeloupe, the second one in New York. And so it was 18 years ago, nearly 18 years ago, and the third one is still waiting for me, because he is waiting for me in Cairns, North Queensland, Australia. And And later, I don't think we will spend all of our the rest of our life on boats, but we never know. One day we will go. I think we will go back to France. Frédéric doesn't like it a lot, but.
Our ultimate goal is summer in Alaska and winter in Mexico. So we'll cruise up and down the west coast, and we have a wine date in Belize,
Yeah, get a buddy
and another wine date in Mexico. At least now we're doing something that I think is way cool, and it's fun, and it's a lot easier to do than maintain a house by yourself. So here we are. This is why we're doing this.
Leslie's the sailor in the family, so I'm just learning. Like, so everything is brand new to me. So I'm looking forward to like this summer, like actually learn how to sail. Just the two of us, and do some fishing, and find some nice bays with just the two of us. Anchor and get a dinghy and go on the shore and walk the beaches. I love walking the beaches. So just shutting the world off. I'm looking forward to that. I don't want to just run to Alaska. I want to enjoy, like see it and spend time, and don't rush. If you like where you are, just stay.
How cool is that?
Yeah, I'd like to do charter work, and not whale watching. I'd like to do eco charters because I think it's more interesting.
But once I get my degree, I don't plan on going into a career right off the bat. I just plan on kind of untying my lines at the dock here and literally sailing off into the sunset, and hopefully to travel the same Pacific route that my parents did and see what's changed in 30 years and explore the world. I mean, it's so cool that you can just travel with your home around the world. I'm going to try to follow the exact same flow plan as my parents did and see exactly what's changed and go to the bays that they described. They felt like they were the first white men there in 20 years, and I want to see if you still have that feeling or not. You're completely contained here pretty much. And if you set the boat up with your own solar and stuff like that, you're feeding off the energy. And the whole fact of a sailboat is that it moves by the energies of the earth, and that it's so cool that I can put $30 of diesel in the tank and it'll last me until the end of August. Because you're just cruising along by the ocean breezes and the currents and the waves, and it's so cool. And you're so much. People don't experience the power of Mother Nature anymore. People are, closed up in cities, sitting in apartment buildings, sitting in their office, driving in their air-conditioned cars to work, and nobody, a storm, like, you go and watch a storm out on the west coast, or you're out in a storm on the west coast, that power, just like that can take your life away, and no amount of technology can save you from that. And that's so cool that those elements are there, and I think that it's important to feel those elements. It's fundamentals of the earth.
Roughly the plan is to go from here to San Francisco, to Santa Barbara, San Diego, Mexico, and then have another think, depending on how the timing is, either to start heading back across the Pacific back to French Polynesia and back through the South Pacific to New Zealand, or maybe spend a little bit more time and go to Costa Rica, Panama, and Ecuador.
Yeah, as far as my plans are concerned, if my wife likes the lifestyle, and we can then consider doing some serious sailing, or hopefully maybe she will allow me to go off on my own to do these little things and join me in the exotic places. One idea I have is to sail to Japan, and that would be via Hawaii. So I'd like to seriously consider, planning a trip that would go up to Japan, and then possibly down from Japan through Guam and down to Australia, New Zealand, and sort of begin a circumnavigation from there through the Torres Straits and across the Indian Ocean. Yeah, I'd like to make this my life. I'd like to be able to live on the boat permanently.
I know there's going to come a time when this boat will pass on to someone else. I'm the custodian of this boat. I keep it this way so I can pass it on to the next person who will enjoy it and take care of it as I have, as every owner of this boat has. But it is funny that I went on getting lots of boats. I finally ended up with a 50-ton vessel that had 12-foot draft, an English cutter. And I realized that boat was too big for me, but at some point in time I started looking for boats that were of this description. Boats that are always designed by Olin Stevens, who I thought was the ultimate designer. And one day my broker called me and he says, "There's this boat that won the Bermuda race." He says, "You got to come down and look at it. It's in San Francisco right now." So I went and looked at it, and I didn't realize at first, because it had been painted white, that it was the same boat that I'd seen as a teenager. And 3 days later, when I got the story straight in my head, I bought it. And it's been with me now for 9 years. Two friends and I went to Maine. We chartered a friendship sloop, a little single-masted, single-sail vessel. And we were down in Maine. We were swimming every day and frying eggs and bathing in the sea and all this. A huge collection of boats came storming down upon us. And this boat came inches away. They were in a race at the time. And even though on board people were very much paying attention to their activities, and the captain was shouting, 6 inches out on the jib, 7 inches out on the staysail, 2 inches out on the main, I said to him, I shouted at him, "That's the boat of my dreams." And he let go with one hand and he tipped his hat and said, "Thank you, sir," and then went back to his racing. Everybody on board was wearing black and white. Of course, I didn't realize at that time that this boat had just won the Bermuda race, and that the man at the helm was Tom Watson, who was chairman of IBM. I was looking for a boat between 50 and 55 feet in length, designed by Olin Stevens and built by a reputable yard. And as soon as I found this boat and realized that this boat was the boat of my dreams and I was in possession of it, I decided to go to the Northwest. I'd always wanted to go to the Northwest. In fact, ancient cartographers have described the North as a place of hope and promise. And somehow or other, I believe that. I believe the North, even the frozen North, is a place of hope and promise. I don't know why I so believe that. I'd read this book called The Curve of Time, which is the reason I came up here. And The Curve of Time is a beautiful expression of what it was like years ago to cruise this area. The most interesting thing I've done here has been to go into Princess Louisa Inlet for the millennium. I sailed up there in a fog. I went under the Lions Gate Bridge in Vancouver. Couldn't see either of the pillars of Lions Gate. I was navigating electronically. Didn't see any shore, any rocks, until we got off Mary Island, which is near to the entrance to the Jervis Inlet, which takes you to Princess Louisa. Very, very short days that time of year, and tremendously overcast. And I had second thoughts. I had reservations about going into Princess Louisa this time of year. I was worried about getting iced up. Let's say about 3 in the afternoon, it was dead black. So anyway, I got into Princess Louisa, and there were 5 other boats in there. Naval architect Bill Garden was there on a boat that he had designed. And he was very happy to get away from his clients, and he spent all of his time telling us stories, and just was a wonderful raconteur. I was the second to the last boat to leave, and I'd noticed there was pancake ice the entire time, and there were 100-foot icicles hanging down in that place. I mean, the waterfalls were all frozen. You could hear a roar of water somewhere under the frozen water, but you couldn't see any moving water. And then, just as I was taking off from the dock, the whole fjord froze over. And we went out through the ice, and the ice was, I would guess, about a 1/4 inch thick. It was breaking into huge circular pieces that were about 60 feet across. And they would rise up on top of one another like the skin of an armadillo. And, you know, so that was the most exciting day of my life, actually.
So we did some power boating, well, here on the West Coast, and then my dad got a sailboat and spent all the rest of the time sailing. And I've never actually camped until I became an adult. Summer holidays were about going out on the boat, like, you know. So then when I stopped hanging out so much with my parents and would start, you know, hanging out with other people, and they'd say, you know, let's go camping. I go, yeah, okay, fine. And this sounds like fun. I've never done this. This is good. But camping, you have to sleep on the ground, and there's no showers, and there's no place to make coffee. And so I didn't like that very much.
I can remember that, I was only, again, 15, and probably only got the job because of my older brother, but I used to watch him run the launch, and I knew all the bells, and you ran the launch by bells, like 2 full ahead, 3 astern, stop short, 1 long. I still remember the bells to this day, and I'm 150 plus tax. So by the time I came back, I had my coxswain papers, my lifeboat certificate, and my AB certificate, and I wasn't even 16. I didn't even have a driver's license yet. So I felt pretty good about being a seaman. I bet the skipper that I could shoot a whale just as good as he could, because he made it look easy. And I guess we were making pretty good money back in those days. So I bet him $50 for every time he let me shoot it to shoot a whale. So he actually was pretty good. He let me shoot at a sperm, which is one of the easiest whales to shoot. They come up and there's usually about 20 of them in a herd. And I shot at it, and obviously I missed it. And I think after about the 4th time, I actually hit one, and it bounced away off and went up in the air. I never did kill a whale. But the skipper, 59 was our record year. I think it was 1,080 whales got shot that year. And then we go into Inner Harbour, and that was where the whaling station was. Wanted to go deep sea after the Sudbury too. I knew that's what I wanted to do more than anything else, is tow deep sea, and I did that for about 5-6 years. One of my tows was going from Vancouver to San Francisco, dropped off the tow, around to San Diego, picked another tow and took it around to Mississippi, dropped it, went around to Quebec, picked up 2 Liberty ships. We towed from Quebec down to New York. We went backwards for a week, iced up. It was a terrible trip out of Quebec in the winter. Finally made it to, in fact, I turned around because it was listing over so bad, turned around and ran with it to ice up on the other side so we could get it back on up in an even keel. It was pretty scary. We were out there with axes and the ice falling down, trying to get it off the rigging. We just were going nowhere and going backwards. I thought I was going to end up in England.
As far as sailing is concerned, I started out sailing on lakes at summer camp when I was a kid, and really enjoyed the lack of any kind of motorized power. Just loved the wind, loved trying to find the sweet spot with the sails, and would spend hours out there. When I was traveling, I signed on to a converted, it was Sumatran dhow, 100% teak mast. Boat was all teak. Very heavy, very slow, but it was owned by an Australian guy, and he was with his family of 4. And out of Singapore, we sailed up to Phuket, and then across to the Andaman Islands, and back to Phuket. And that sort of offshore experience was absolutely thrilling, and the whole lifestyle. And I decided I wanted to make sailing an important part of my life. Recently returned to Canada from Japan, where I've been for about 20 years. I'd loved sailing. I learned to sail in Canada on a lake, and got bitten at that time and was forever interested. When I got to Japan, first job I found was teaching English, as almost everybody who goes there does. And my first student was a sailor. He owned a boat, and we hit it off really well. And so I did a lot of sailing in Japan, crewed on racing boats, various sizes, from smaller dinghies, racing dinghies, 470s and lasers. Moved up to Hiroshi's boat, which was a 27-foot locally built Yokoyama racer, and then on to a FAR, 43-foot boat, where I was a bowman, did most of the bow work in my younger, sprightly, springier days. Managed to do that for quite a while, fortunately. About 11 years of constant weekend racing, mostly during the summer. And when the typhoon season started, we'd often go out just as the typhoons were coming in, a day or two before, just for the thrill of it. And had a lot of fun doing that.
Well, the idea was we wanted to go offshore. We didn't know exactly where we wanted to go, but one of the things we wanted to see was we wanted to see some icebergs. And although we're from New Zealand, Antarctica is the closest place to see icebergs, but we thought it would probably be safer and more realistic to try and get to Alaska. about 6 days out of the Chatham Islands we got into some pretty nasty weather conditions, and we had to heave to, which is basically stopping the boat in the water, trying to make as little amount of leeway as possible, and you're waiting for the weather to improve. So you take all your sails down, put up some storm sails. We've got a storm jib and a trysail. We tried that combination, but it was too much for the strength of the wind, so we just sat there under the trysail, and we sat like that for over 3 days. During those 3 days it got progressively worse, so we were sort of, each day we were getting a little more worried, but eventually sort of at the end of the 3rd day things started to calm down a little bit, and we were able to carry on. 24 days later we finally in the distance saw this shape on the horizon, which was a little island called Ravai Vai, which is one of the islands. I think there are 4 in total of the Austral Islands. We tried a few times to use the sextant for navigating, but during those 30 days I think we probably only saw the sun maybe 2 or 3 days. Not ideal conditions for trying to navigate with the sextant. Suddenly coming from French Polynesia, where it's very, almost third world, you know, the place isn't very modern, then suddenly you're in Hilo and there's Harley Davidsons and these big 4-wheel drive monster trucks. So it was a bit of a shock for us to sort of suddenly be in what seemed like, you know, a big American city. We could see the land from a good way off, but then as we got closer and closer, the fog really came in very thick, and suddenly Alaska disappeared in our view. We couldn't see it until we were, you know, very close, within a mile, I think. Then so yeah, we went to Tracy Arm first of all, and yeah, very impressive, the glacier and the ice up there. It was pretty thick. There was a lot of icebergs, and quite hard to get right up to the end of the head of the glacier. But we sort of got, we were determined that we were going to get as far as we could. So we sort of pushed on, and we pushed our way through the ice a bit and got really close to the glacier, and could hear the big lumps sort of carving off and, you know, making the water rush towards you. It was a big thrill. Black bears to feed on the salmon, so we spent a day there, left the boat anchored, and walked up to this spot where you can see them. You could be as close as you are to me from a black bear, and they're completely oblivious to your presence because they're just so interested in gorging themselves on salmon.
My first memories of being on the boat would be at Christmas time. We'd always come to Victoria, and we'd sail over from Vancouver, and it was kind of a neat thing because there'd be snow on the boat, and it wasn't kind of the atmosphere that I usually associated with sailing further years in my life. There's no major trips, mostly just coastal journeys up and down to the Queen Charlotte's, and a lot of inside passage stuff.
I used to sail a lot with my parents because they were teachers, so they had a lot of vacation during holidays, during the summer. So they had a boat from, I always had a boat, a sailboat, so we sailed a lot in Mediterranean Sea. So I used to sail before knowing François.
I have always liked sailing. Okay, I prefer to sail on a dinghy than this kind of boat, for sure. I sailed down to the north coast of Venezuela. I left the boat in Curaçao, the Dutch island there. I fly to South America. I backpack in South America. I came back to Curaçao. Then in 92, 93, I went up sailing through the Bahamas, Florida, New York. I sailed up the Hudson River to the Lac Champlain. I spent the winter in Canada, in Quebec. And at the summertime I sailed on the St. Lawrence, Newfoundland, Saint-Pierre and Miquelon, French Island, and then back to the West Indies. I tried once to sail on a race boats, like a trimaran for ocean crossing, and this was fun. This was like a little dinghies, and but it's too expensive for me, and I am too old to do it anyway.
We left Tahiti in 2002 for Marquesas Islands for the bad season, hurricane season, but there is no hurricane in Tahiti. But we spent 6 months in Marquesas Island, and then we moved to Hawaii and Canada, so British Columbia. The best time, not in Southeast Alaska because it was a bad year, not good weather. So it was only because of the weather. It's always nice to sail with François. It's not it was because the weather. We were motoring too much, so it was not nice this part. Dixon Entrance and Hecate Strait between Masset and Queen Charlotte City, because it was 100 miles, so we can't do it during the time. We are too slow. So, and it was a rough sea, and we knew there was a lot of logs, and I was so afraid because the boat was, you know, every wave it was doing this, and I thought, we will hurt a log, so every time I was, not this one, it was awful.
Well, we actually started building a boat, thinking that it was the only way that we could get offshore, which was a big sort of dream of ours. But then, part way through that, the financial sort of situation made it seem more attractive to buy one, and that was sort of due to the New Zealand dollar and the second-hand boat market and things like that. So we decided to put the boat building process on hold and buy a boat. And so we bought this boat here off an amateur builder. This was the second boat he built. It was built in Auckland. It was launched in 1992. It's steel, 33 foot on deck. It's a New Zealand design, Dennis Ganley. My brother and I really admired this man, Jerry Clark, who's he's well known amongst sailors and sort of nature lovers and that, but not really very well known, certainly not internationally, but not even that well known with the New Zealand public. But he's a very interesting guy who built his own boat, funded his own expeditions, and he's mainly really fascinated in birds, seabirds. He's a qualified ornithologist, and so his main goal was to build this boat and go to these sort of remote places in the around the subantarctic, you know, in the Southern Ocean, all the sort of subantarctic islands that are there, visit them and study the seabird life that's there. And so there's that part of him, but also just his sailing really sort of fascinated us, because this little boat that he built, he did some amazing trips in this little boat. Got himself into some pretty scary situations, but yeah, very interesting.
This is Wings. It's a permanent part of me. I don't know why my parents named it Wings. Named her Wings. My name in Latin is from the sea, and my middle name is Oliver. So I'm from the peaceful sea, which was Pacific side of the Panama Canal. This feather here, the chief of the Capilano band came on board and christened the vessel for safe passage. And this feather is a symbol for safe passage, and it's been with the boat ever since.
I've been trying to buy this hull for 5 years. This is a 48-foot Joshua and Slocum Spray, a Bruce Roberts replica Spray. I says, just think big and think beautiful. So it's been a labor of love, and she did have good taste. It is a beautiful hull, and it will be a beautiful boat when we're finished. No wheelhouse to speak of, just a small wheelhouse, and we've been working on it ever since. We haven't stopped, and we've got a full-size freezer, 2 stoves, 4 hot plates, 2 sinks, a full-size piano, a complete nook. That bed folds up to up top there, and you've got a complete nook bed there.
I wasn't too sure what kind of boat I was looking for in the beginning. I wanted something fast, wanted something definitely seaworthy, but then I started to remember the experiences that I'd had off the coasts of Malaysia and Thailand. I moved away from sort of day sailor type of boats into cruising boats, and came across an article on West sails, which is what this is a West Sail 28, and that they were prevalent in all the oceans. People around the world have West sails and sail them pretty much anywhere. And I thought, well, with that kind of legacy, I think it's pretty safe to consider a West sail. Got to thinking, okay, well, West sails, yes, they can be sailed fast, and they are very seaworthy and good, strong, stout boats, and that's essentially what got me into this boat. It wasn't until I actually got on board the West Sail up in Maple Bay. I got on board a 32 and had a look, a 32-footer, and I thought, wow, these are really nice. Interiors, teak, mahogany, very well designed, very roomy, lots of storage space.
It's called croque pomme. I will explain you what it means.
Well,
So-
pomme is an apple.
Pomme is an apple, and
Yes.
croque is like biting or crunching it. So it means enjoy life because you bite the apple, or also the Eve sin to bite the apple. So you have the good and the bad at the same time. And the boat was named by the owner, the prior owner of this boat who built it. He had a big contract with Apple.
The
So, computers, and they wanted to make and he was able to buy and build this boat because of Apple mainly. So he wanted a name turning around an apple. And so this boat is Joubert Nivelt design, so two well-known French architects in France. And it's a plywood, fiberglass coated. It's a center keel. It's fin keel. Okay, it's a fin keel. It's a sloop, rear cockpit, and as you will see, it's
40 feet
completely open inside.
40 feet long?
And 40 foot long. Yes. What else can we say? I bought this boat in 1990. I am still very good friends with the prior owner, so it means that they built. It's a good boat, and they built it well.
I've told you I'm a boat nut. It took me years to recognize that the real emphasis in my life was about boats. It wasn't about business. And I did business to keep my boats afloat. And I think it's fair to say this boat, which was kept so impeccably by two very, very rich men, it has been kept well by me as well, because I'm obsessed with it and all the details of it, as you'll see when we wander through. This boat is an extension of me and my cat, of course.
So loosely translated, samsara means the vehicle to nirvana. Well, we're on a vehicle, And I knew that we were going to get a sailboat eventually. Masculine enough to be, you know, it's a strong vessel, but feminine enough because, you know, she's a she. So you got to have like a strong chick thing happening there. So once again, that word samsara, it's got enough masculine, enough feminine, enough strength.
Yes, it worked.
Yeah, I love that name.
Yeah.
I love that name. I think that is the perfect name.
Hunter, it's we like the stop. We definitely like the interior of the Hunter. It's open. It's because we're moving on to be our home.
So it's all new technology on this boat. This is a new production run, and so it was just hard once we knew, like in mast furling and all kinds of other trick things, that they've improved to make sailing so much easier.
Yeah, definitely.
And you know, that's something that's a factor for us. If it's, you know, you should always be able to sail your own boat by yourself, but it's nice to have crew. It's easier if you have crew, but sometimes I don't have any crew. So the easier it is to make the boat go, the better it is for us. You know, I don't see it as small. I don't. Everybody says that.
That's
you know,
not.
that's the number one thing, like, ooh, tiny, and it's not.
No.
How much space do you need?
Yeah.
I'm only this big. I can only occupy one, you know, how many different places do I need to sit down? You know, how many, like I can only be in one place at a time. So I sit at this table, and I don't have, in the house we had a dining room table and a kitchen table and a coffee table and a side table and a table on the balcony and a table out the back. And
Well, you
I mean,
only
how many
need-
tables do I need? I only need one table. You don't have that whole kitchen party, living room party. You know, you can just have the whole party right here. It's working for me.
So we spent our first winter in Victoria, here in front of the Empress, so the same place. It was beautiful, and we enjoyed it a lot. Then we came back in Victoria for spending another winter, not moving because of the gales and the bad weather during the winter. Then we moved, it was last summer, we moved for
This time with
east,
the boat?
with the boat in Southeast Alaska. Then we thought, what will we do now? Will we go south directly in San Francisco or Mexico? Or, oh no, let's spend another winter in Victoria, it's so nice. So this is our third winter in Victoria. We enjoy it a lot. This is a nice place because for the boat is very well protected. The harbor is very sheltered, close, so it's very nice. Even if wind is little strong, it's okay for the boat. So we like it for this. And
It's cheap.
And it's cheap.
We actually arrived in Vancouver first of all, and because well, we wanted to go to Vancouver, and also there was a boat show there, a classic wooden boat show that was we had heard about. That we decided that we wanted to go to. So we stayed over in Vancouver for 10 days, 2 weeks, and heard that Victoria was a pretty good place to stay for the winter if you needed to, and decided we'd come here. So here we are.
Actually, I bought the boat without really considering at all where I was going to keep it. I thought, well, you know, I like the outdoors, and it also reminded me a lot of Japan. The lay of the land is somewhat similar to large areas of Japan are quite similar. So decided to make Victoria my home.
It's very hard to find a place as soon as you call yourself liveaboard. So we polled them all, and this was one of the places that got back to us and said, yeah, we would like to have you. We would like to have your money. We want you to come and live here, and we'll make it easy for you to make that happen. So they've been treating us like gold here, very impressive, great people, met some fabulous people.
Definitely.
Mind you, you know, all boat people, all marina people are good people.
But I digress, because what I really wanted to tell you is why I ended up over here in Victoria. And the way that happened is this Cat Morgan, who replaced my last serious girlfriend, was living on board with me, and a neighbor apparently complained to the management of Cole Harbour, a very, very pretty yacht basin. And the management they were difficult people anyway. and with just endless rules. They just came up with new rules all the time. And some dockmaster came up to me and said, "Your cat is bothering people on the dock." And of course I have to admit, and I always liked the fact that Morgan crawls on boats and looks in the portholes, looking to see the moths inside the boats. He's always looking for moths inside boats. And I always thought that was charming, and most people loved that about him and welcomed him and petted him. But when they complained about Morgan, I had to leave. And I think I left 3 days after that. I drove over here, drove to Victoria. My best friend said, "Go down to Victoria. They have this tremendous arrangement. They've changed things down there. It's going to be the prettiest location for your yacht you will ever be in." And sure enough, they gave me this location right in front of the Parliament building. And this is like being in Cap d'Antibes, or it's like being in one of the great yacht locations of the world. My boat shows very well. I can see it from the Parliament building. I can see it from the hotel. People have actually checked into the hotel and called me immediately saying, "My God, I can see you right in front of the hotel. That's amazing."
Francois Dupart and Frédéric Basilia left Victoria shortly after this and sailed south, first to Mexico, where we joined them, before they sailed to the Marquesas Islands of French Polynesia, where we again spent several weeks with them. They are now settled in Tahiti, still living aboard Croc Palm and working there, but planning to sail to Australia to visit the third friend of Francois. An eventual return to France is still in their future. Ron Cook is still living aboard his Joshua Slocum Spray replica in and around Victoria, and is continuing to make extensive renovations on Blue Whale and also the large ocean-going tugboat that he has bought. Mike McHenry and his brother, who didn't appear here, have now had further adventures sailing their steel-hulled boat Jerry Clark back to their home in New Zealand, where they continue to live, work and sail. Maris MacDonald continued to live aboard his boat Wings whilst he was at university. He has since graduated and gone off exploring the wide world in the boat in which he was conceived. Warren Fraser continued to sail his boat Zamansa around Victoria and the northwest of the States and Canada, but has since returned to Japan, where he has lived for 25 years. He has bought a new boat in Japan, the Voyager of Yokohama, and has extensively sailed around those great islands in that country. He is planning an extensive offshore cruise in the near future, possibly a circumnavigation of the planet. Jay and Leslie Lesure continued to live aboard their hunter Samsara for a while, but eventually swallowed the anchor, as they say, and moved back ashore after the sale of the vessel. John Painter and his cat Morgan continued to live aboard the magnificent Samarkand for a year or two before selling her and moving back to the United States. Samarkand was bought by a German sailor who sailed her back to Germany, where she is based in the very port where she was built. So for this historic vessel, history has come full circle. So those were a few of the denizens of the Inner Harbour of Victoria this past winter. There's a great challenge in living aboard a boat. Everything has to have a place, but we do have a place for everything. We have a place to sleep, we have a place to cook, we have a place to sit and eat, we have a couple of places to sit and read and check the internet. What more does one need? When people ask us these days where we live, we say we have a nice little place at the coast, we have a nice living room, a pretty kitchen, we have a couple of bathrooms, a couple of bedrooms, we have large decks all around and extensive sea views. What's more, we can move it from place to place wherever we want to be. There's a lot to be said for that.